At 7:14 on a Tuesday morning, my bank app asked whether I had authorized $6,842 to Willow Creek Wedding House. The note beneath the charge said final parent balance, Chloe Hale. My husband and I had one child. Her name was Tess, she was 24, and she was not engaged. I took a screenshot before calling Mark. He was supposed to be driving from our home outside Columbus to a 3-day equipment training session in Lexington, Kentucky. He answered on the second ring with the hollow sound of the car speakers around his voice. "Did you pay a wedding venue this morning?" I asked. There was a pause, then the click of his turn signal. "How much?" $6,842. "Who is Chloe Hale?" Mark exhaled hard enough for the microphone to catch it. He said Chloe was the daughter of Robin Hale, a facilities coordinator he had met through a college fundraiser. Her venue balance was due at noon, a family loan had fallen through, and he had agreed to bridge the payment until Friday. "Why does the invoice call it a parent balance?" I asked. "That's how the venue categorizes contributions." "Why did you use our joint checking?" "Wrong saved account." "I'll put it back." He tried to move on to a question about the plumber coming Thursday. I stopped him and asked whether Robin knew he had taken nearly $7,000 from a marital account. "Elaine, I'm merging onto the interstate. Let me fix it before you turn this into something." The sentence did not sound like a man embarrassed by a banking mistake. It sounded like a man asking for time to make several stories agree. "My name is Elaine Porter. I was 50, worked as a compensation analyst for a regional hospital network, and had been married to Mark for 27 years. Mark was 52 and trained maintenance teams on industrial laundry systems across 4 states. I had seen the training rooms, machines taller than he was, and work shirts stained during demonstrations. The travel was real enough to make extra nights believable. For most of our marriage, that schedule had been inconvenient rather than suspicious. We kept personal spending accounts but used joint checking for the mortgage, insurance, and family expenses. Mark was an authorized owner, and any debit above $5,000 alerted both of us. I did not report fraud. I opened the merchant detail already visible in our account. It gave me the venue name, Chloe's full name, and a Saturday date 5 weeks away. Willow Creek maintained a public page for couples who chose to share their stories. The couple's introduction identified Chloe as 22. Chloe and Jonah's page included a photograph of Mark with one arm around her at a high school graduation. The caption read, "Chloe's bonus dad, Mark, who has been there for every big day since she was 10. I read the sentence again because my mind kept reducing it to a coworker helping with a wedding. Every big day since she was 10 was not alone. It was 12 years. At the bottom of the page, a thank you list named Robin and Mark, mother and bonus father of the bride. There was no last name after Mark. I downloaded the public page as a PDF and closed the browser. I did not message the bride, the venue, or Robin. I called my daughter. Tess was in the final semester of a graduate urban planning program in Chicago. She answered while walking to class, and I told her I needed her to stop somewhere private before I sent a link. "Is Dad hurt?" she asked. "No. This is about a wedding payment and a family I don't recognize." I heard a door open, then the quieter acoustics of a stairwell. I sent the page. Tess did not speak for almost a minute. Then she said, "That graduation picture." I asked what she noticed. Mark wore the blue striped tie Tess had given him, and Chloe's cap tassel showed 2022. That May, Mark missed Tessa's first college design exhibition because Storm supposedly canceled his Kentucky flight. The public school archive placed Chloe's commencement on the same evening. Mark had not been trapped at an airport. He had chosen one event and invented weather to explain his absence from the other. Tessa's breathing changed. "Don't make me call him right now," she said. I told her I would not. I also told her she did not need to search for more photographs or become my investigator. She said she already knew one more thing. The previous fall, Mark asked her to design a CNJ monogram for what he called a trainer's retirement gift. The wedding page used that design between Chloe's and Jonah's names. Tess remembered Mark praising the curved lettering and saying his colleague had become emotional when he saw it. She had felt proud that something she made mattered to a stranger. Now she knew Mark had watched her accept gratitude from a person who did not exist. Mark had recruited our daughter to make a detail for the other young woman's wedding without telling either of them what the work meant. I asked Tess to forward his request and took the morning off. I reviewed only joint or public records. Checking showed no earlier venue payment, and our tax returns showed no unknown business, dependent, or property. The records showed no second legal household, but the public page still demanded an explanation. Our budget also explained how years could remain invisible. We each received the same personal allowance, and Mark's employer reimbursed legitimate mileage and hotels after trips. If he extended a real training visit with money from his own account, joint checking showed only the ordinary transfer we had agreed on. The venue debit was the first time his other role crossed an account that reported to both of us. At 9:36, Mark called back. I moved the money from my personal savings, he said. The bank showed a transfer of $6,842 into joint checking 3 minutes earlier. Reimbursement corrected the balance, not the decision to use it. I asked whether he had seen the Willow Creek page. He went quiet. They call me Bonus Dad because Chloe's father died, he said. He described Robin as a close friend and the payment as gratitude. The page says you've been there since Chloe was 10. That's exaggerated. Were you at her high school graduation? Another pause. For part of it. Were you at the Cincinnati airport that night? I was trying to make both events. Your flight was cancelled. Elaine, I can explain dates when I'm home. I asked him one direct question. Have you had a romantic or sexual relationship with Robin Hale? He said, not now. The answer reached backward without giving me a starting point. He said the romantic relationship ended 3 years earlier but refused to give its length while driving. He promised to return by 3. I told him not to come to the house until I had arranged for my sister Paula to be present. He objected, but I wanted a witness to what was actually said. At noon, Chloe sent Tess a direct message. Mark had apparently told Robin that I discovered the venue payment and might cancel it. Chloe wrote, I'm sorry about the wrong account. Mark said you knew he was helping with the wedding. I don't want this to hurt you or ruin anything between him and Tess. Chloe believed I approved Mark's role and that Tess knew her. Tess asked whether she should answer. I told her to write only one true sentence if she wanted. My mother and I did not know Mark was part of your family or paying for your wedding. Tess sent it, and Chloe did not reply. At 2:48, Mark pulled into our driveway. He walked into the kitchen, saw Paula beside me, and placed his phone and car keys on the counter as if surrendering objects could substitute for an answer. I put the bank charge, the public wedding page, Tessa's monogram request, and the 2 graduation dates in front of him. Mark sat down without removing his jacket. Robin and I were involved, he said. It ended. I stayed close to Chloe because leaving her too would have been cruel. I asked when the affair began. He said 2015. The caption said he had been there since 2014. When I pointed that out, Mark closed his eyes. We crossed the line in 2015, he said. Before that, we were friends. And after you say it ended? Friends again. Paula asked him to let me finish. I asked what Robin believed about our marriage. Mark rubbed the edge of the bank printout with his thumb. She believes we've lived separately inside the house for a long time. How long? Since Tess was in high school. I asked whether Robin believed I knew about the relationship. He nodded once. Then his phone lit up on the counter with a message preview from Chloe. Why did Tess say they never knew US? Mark turned the phone face down. I did not need to open it. The young woman he said he stayed to protect had just learned that her family role was built on my invented consent. Mark asked whether he could call Chloe before she heard a harsher version from someone else. I said he could make whatever calls he chose after leaving the house, but I would not help him manage the order in which the truth reached people. He looked at Paula, then back at me. I never meant for joint money to stay in the wedding, he said. You are explaining the alert, I told him. I'm asking about 12 years. He said there were not 12 years of an affair. He claimed the physical relationship ran from 2015 through 2022 and called the remaining years, family attachment without romance. That answer mattered for health, but it did not make the graduations, holidays, monogram, and wedding payment honest. I asked him where he stayed in Kentucky. He said hotels during training weeks and Robin's guest room on personal weekends. Mark counted 7 personal weekends the previous year, all described to me as training or emergency repairs. The hidden life borrowed rooms from legitimate travel and Robin's house when work ended. I asked whether Robin and Chloe believed he would move there. Mark said they had discussed it, but no date existed. After the wedding? I asked. His eyes moved toward the phone. That was one possibility. I asked if he had told them he would file for divorce. I said we were working through timing. Did you say that to me? No. The answer was quiet. Paula stood and carried the untouched coffee to the sink. She did not interrupt again. I told Mark to stay at a hotel for the week and communicate by email about the house. He asked whether the marriage was over. I said the version we had been living was over, other decisions required facts about health, money, and the people he involved. Mark collected his keys but left the phone on the counter. When I pointed to it, he looked genuinely surprised, as if he had forgotten which room required which object. He took it and left. That evening, Chloe replied to Tess. She did not accuse either of us. She wrote that Mark had been part of her life since middle school, that she believed he and I had lived in separate bedrooms for years, and that he said Tess knew about Robin but did not want a relationship with her. Chloe apologized for the monogram. She had thanked Mark for asking his designer daughter, and he told her Tess preferred helping privately because family introductions would be awkward. Tess read the message and said, "He made my silence answer a question nobody asked me." She wanted one conversation but owed Chloe no friendship or reassurance. We agreed to avoid intimate details, blame, private photographs, and promises of future contact. Chloe asked for her mother to join. The 4 of us spoke the next morning. Robin Hale was 49 and worked as facilities coordinator for Bluegrass Community College. She looked exhausted and kept one hand around a water glass. She began by asking whether Mark and I had ever separated inside the house. I said no. We had shared a bedroom, finances, vacations, and plans throughout the period. Robin asked whether I knew Mark stayed at her house. I said I had learned that the previous day. She closed her eyes and whispered, "He said you knew where he was." Chloe sat beside her, not touching her. Robin met Mark at a 2014 youth engineering fundraiser hosted by her college. He judged student projects after a Friday training session and helped 10-year-old Chloe repair a display motor. The friendship became physical the following year. Mark told Robin that our marriage had ended emotionally after years of conflict but that we were postponing formal separation until Tess finished high school. When Tess started college, he blamed tuition, the pandemic, and my hospital work. When she completed college, he said graduate school still required one household. When Tess moved to Chicago, he said she had reacted badly to learning about Robin and cut off any discussion of divorce. Every milestone closed one excuse and opened another. Robin had seen occasional photographs of Mark with me at hospital fundraisers and family holidays. He said we attended together to avoid questions from older relatives and to protect my health insurance until the divorce. When I posted a 25th anniversary dinner, Mark told Robin the meal was Tessa's attempt to keep peace between parents who no longer shared a marriage. Robin noticed that he never mentioned her publicly, but he framed secrecy as respect for the boundaries I supposedly demanded. Evidence of our marriage became evidence of how carefully he claimed to be ending it. Chloe asked twice to meet Tess, once before college and again after her engagement. Mark said Tess knew Robin's name but would treat any contact as pressure to choose sides. He made refusal sound so specific that neither woman wanted to violate it. Robin admitted she had stopped asking for documents because Mark arrived often enough to make the future feel delayed rather than imaginary. He kept clothes there, had a key, knew the neighbors, and handled repairs without receiving mail or claiming ownership. Chloe described him teaching her to drive, attending parent conferences, reviewing college essays, and sitting with her when she decided to change majors. She called him Mark in public until high school, then, bonus dad, after he said Tess understood and did not object. Mark never adopted her or became a legal guardian, but the repeated role was real to Chloe. The wedding was supposed to be the first event where that role became fully public. Mark had agreed to appear in the family introduction, escort Chloe after a memorial mention of Evan, share a father-daughter dance with her, and give remarks. He told them that once the wedding was over, he could stop protecting Tess from an announcement she had already accepted privately. The ceremony was not merely another milestone he planned to attend. It was the date when the hidden family expected to become the visible one. Tess asked about the 2022 graduation photograph. Robin gave the date and time. It matched Tessa's exhibition exactly. Mark had told Robin his flight home was cancelled and that he could stay for Chloe's ceremony without disappointing anyone. He used the same weather in opposite directions. To us, the storm kept him away. To them, it freed him to remain. Chloe began to cry and said she would never have asked him to choose her event if she had known. Tess said, "You didn't choose." He did. It was the only reassurance she offered. Mark had pledged $10,000 toward the wedding. He used joint checking for the final $6,842 rather than drain his remaining savings, then depleted those savings to replace the money after the alert. Robin offered to return it, but I would address the money with Mark rather than disrupt Chloe's venue contract. I asked for dates tied to our supposed separation, health risk, and financial promises. Robin agreed. Before ending the call, Chloe asked Tess whether Mark had been a good father to her. Tess looked away from the screen. "Sometimes," she said. "That's why this hurts." Neither young woman tried to turn 12 years into one verdict. That afternoon, Robin sent a 4-page timeline, 7 travel confirmations bearing her or Mark's name, and 2 documents related to the wedding contribution. She did not send intimate messages. The dates aligned with legitimate Kentucky training sessions and with weekends Mark had labeled optional certification clinics. The second wedding document was a family questionnaire Willow Creek used to prepare introductions and speeches. Under father of the bride, Chloe had written deceased, Evan Hale. Under escort or honorary parent, she had written Mark Porter, bonus dad. The next page asked whether an honorary parent planned remarks. Mark had checked yes and uploaded a draft. I did not want to read a wedding speech written for someone else, but Robin highlighted one paragraph because it concerned Tess and me directly. Mark had written, "I failed as a father once. My first daughter grew away from me, and Chloe taught me that a man can still earn a second chance to show up." He planned to say that in a room full of people who believed Tess had rejected him. He had missed her exhibition to attend Chloe's graduation, used Tessa's work in the wedding design, and then turned the distance he created into the explanation for why another daughter mattered more. The speech changed the scale of what I understood. Mark had not merely hidden a second family role from us. He had written Tess out of his public story so the role would look honorable. Tess read the paragraph once. Then she closed her laptop and said, "I don't want him using my name, even without saying it." Chloe heard her. "He won't," she said. She removed Mark as escort, cancelled the dance and speech, and told us the wedding would continue without any announcement about why. It was her event and her decision. The first practical consequence of Mark's hidden life was not a dramatic exposure. It was a bride withdrawing a role she had granted under false facts. Mark learned about the cancelled role from Chloe, not from me. He called that evening and said the 4 of us had made a permanent decision during one emotional conversation. I reminded him that Chloe had made the wedding decision herself. "You sent them a speech about Tess," I said. "It didn't name her. How many first daughters do you have?" Mark said the paragraph was unfinished and that wedding language was supposed to be sentimental. I asked what part was inaccurate, that Tess grew away from him, that Chloe gave him a second chance, or that he had failed once and corrected himself elsewhere. He said, "I was trying to explain what Chloe means to me. By making what Tess means to you smaller." Mark did not answer. I told him I would meet again after medical appointments and a legal consultation, but I would not debate the wedding. My family law attorney, Nina Patel, told me to preserve the shared records, avoid a false fraud claim or employer contact, and focus on money, liabilities, and property. I scheduled health testing and required approval from both account owners for large transactions. Mark agreed and provided a year of personal statements. Ordinary disclosure would cover the rest. 2 days later, Mark met Paula and me at a rented conference room in my attorney's building, though neither attorney attended the personal conversation. Tess joined by video for the first 20 minutes because she had questions that belonged to her. She asked when Mark first told Robin that she knew about the relationship. He said after Tess started college. "You told Chloe I knew you were helping with the wedding last year," Tess said. "Why didn't you ask me?" Mark leaned toward the laptop. "I thought forcing an introduction would put you in the middle. You put my design in the wedding and my absence in your speech. I was already in the middle." Mark apologized for the monogram and said he had convinced himself it was a harmless way to let both parts of his life touch. Tess asked about her Cincinnati exhibition. He admitted no flight had been booked that night. He had planned to attend Chloe's graduation for months and created the airport story because he could not explain why a work trip mattered more than his daughter's event. "Did you watch my recording?" Tess asked. Mark said yes. She asked one more question: how many of her milestones had he skipped for Chloe's? Mark named 3 direct conflicts and admitted he had blamed Kentucky service calls. Tessa's face tightened. "Don't guess and send me a bigger list later," she said. "If you find a date that changes something practical, tell Mom's lawyer. I'm not auditing my childhood." She ended the call after telling me she was safe and would speak with her therapist. Mark stared at the dark laptop screen. He said he had never wanted Tess to feel replaced. Paula replied, "Then stop asking her feelings to correct what you did." I began with the timeline. Robin recorded the last physical contact in April 2024, 16 months later than Mark had claimed. He admitted her date was accurate. He said he compressed it because 3 years sounded more finished than 2. I told him inaccurate health information was not a softer version of the truth. He apologized and confirmed there had been no physical contact since. I asked about other partners, children, property, debt, and legal agreements. Mark said there were none, and later disclosure supported him. He held no interest in Robin's house and no legal role in Chloe's life. The hidden system existed through presents, stories, and promises rather than official status. I asked how he managed time. Most Kentucky trips were legitimate, but he extended some through Sunday and claimed another class had been added. An overnight bag stayed first in the training center and later in Robin's guest room. He hid inside his published work schedule and told Robin that our separation boundaries prohibited evening calls. To me, his reluctance to answer work calls at dinner looked respectful. To Robin, the same silence looked like evidence that our separation had rules. I asked why he stayed after the affair supposedly ended. Mark said Chloe had lost one father and he could not volunteer to become another man who disappeared. "So you protected her by lying about Tess?" I asked. He said the story about Tess developed slowly. Robin wanted to know why a grown daughter never visited. Chloe wanted to invite her to graduation, then to the engagement party. Each time, Mark said Tess was angry, busy, or unwilling. Over time, he began describing ordinary distance missed calls, a cancelled holiday flight, a disagreement about graduate school as proof that Tess had rejected his other family. The more he invested in Chloe, the more he needed Tess's absence to seem chosen. "And with us?" I asked. Mark said he told himself Robin and Chloe received parts of him that work already kept away from home. He claimed our marriage remained separate from what happened in Kentucky. I pointed to the joint venue payment, the monogram, the false weather, and the wedding speech. There had never been separate parts. There had been transfers we could not see. I asked what he expected after Chloe's wedding. Mark had told Robin he would move into her house by the end of summer and begin divorce proceedings. He had not signed a lease, hired a lawyer, redirected mail, or discussed separation with me. He had not priced movers or decided what property he would take. The plan was detailed enough to keep Robin waiting and vague enough to let Mark abandon it without unwinding anything. Even his promised departure left me responsible for the first irreversible step. He said he intended to do it this time. What made this time different? I asked. The wedding closed a chapter. Tess was settled. Chloe wouldn't need me in the same way. His answer exposed the structure more clearly than a confession about love would have. He had tied every decision to a daughter's stage of life so that responsibility always belonged to someone younger. First Tess needed high school stability. Then college support. Then Chloe needed a father. Then a wedding. If the payment alert had not appeared, another need could have replaced the wedding. I asked whether he wanted our marriage or merely wanted to leave it without becoming the person who left. Mark cried and said he loved me, Robin, and both young women in different ways. He said there was no choice that did not injure someone. There was a choice before every lie, I said. My voice shook, and Mark spoke over the first half, so I waited and said the entire sentence again. This time, he let me finish. Avoiding one honest rupture had produced years of smaller ruptures distributed among people who could not name them. I ended the meeting after 2 hours. Mark moved into an extended-stay hotel and later rented a one-bedroom apartment. Robin ended their relationship 3 days after our call. She did not ask him to move in after the wedding. Chloe told him she would contact him when ready and warned him not to arrive uninvited. She chose her mother to escort her down the aisle. Her late father remained named in the program. No substitute speech explained the change. Mark did not attend. Tess and I neither watched nor contacted guests. The morning after the ceremony, Chloe sent Tess one sentence: "We got married, and the day stayed ours." Tess replied, "I'm glad." They did not begin a friendship. They stopped being imaginary enemies in Mark's story. Mark asked for marriage counseling. I agreed to 3 discernment sessions, not reconciliation, because I wanted to know whether any future he described could exist without monitoring him. In the first session, he called Robin's family a place where he felt useful. The counselor asked why usefulness required secrecy. In the second, Mark said Tessa's independence left him unsure who he was at home. I reminded him the affair began when Tess was 12 and still needed rides to soccer practice. In the third, he proposed sharing his location, surrendering personal accounts, ending travel, and letting me inspect every message. Those controls might show where he was. They could not make his presence with me mean what I had believed it meant. I declined reconciliation and filed for divorce. The decision did not depend on proving that every year was false. It depended on knowing that Mark had used our daughter's name, my supposed consent, and our marriage's ordinary privacy to make a second fatherhood look honest. The divorce took 13 months. Financial disclosure found no second property, hidden child, secret business, altered beneficiary, or undisclosed debt. Mark's spending records showed about $31,000 in gifts, personal travel, meals, and wedding contributions across 12 years. Some came from bonuses and some from the personal allowance we each received under our household budget. The law did not label every private dollar stolen simply because he lied about its purpose. Nina used the records to negotiate the full division of cash, retirement accounts, vehicles, and home equity rather than promising me a theatrical reimbursement for an entire relationship. The $6,842 had been restored to joint checking on the day of the alert. The temporary use, the larger spending pattern, and the remaining wedding pledge were documented in settlement discussions. Mark did not owe the venue more money, and Chloe did not owe us repayment. Our medical tests were negative. That result closed one danger without making the years harmless. Mark kept his job. I never contacted his company because the records did not show that his employer paid for personal weekends or that he falsified training he actually delivered. Robin kept her job and her house. She and Mark did not reconcile. She sent me one final message confirming that he returned her key and collected his clothes while her brother was present. I thanked her for the timeline and ended contact. Knowing the basic system did not entitle me to watch its remains. For the first 3 months, Tess did not speak to Mark. He sent apologies through email, and she filtered them into a folder she opened only with her therapist. I did not ask to read them. Mark had spent years converting her silence into whatever explanation he needed. I was determined not to turn her silence into evidence for my divorce, my anger, or his redemption. When she chose to answer, she set terms herself: one video call a month, no discussion of Robin or Chloe unless Tess asked, no requests that she reassure him he was still a good father, and no surprise visits. Some calls lasted 10 minutes. Others did not happen because Tess cancelled. I knew that only when scheduling holidays required it. She was not betraying me by maintaining contact with him, and she was not responsible for proving that consequences existed. Our house became the most difficult asset. At first I wanted to sell because every room contained a travel explanation I could now question. Then I realized leaving immediately would make Mark's deception choose my address for me. An appraisal showed that I could keep the house if I refinanced, used part of my non-retirement savings for the buyout, and accepted a higher monthly payment. It was not the most profitable option, but it was affordable. Mark received his negotiated equity instead of losing the home as punishment. I refinanced after the decree and stayed. The first night the deed and loan were in my name alone, I sat at the kitchen table expecting relief. What I felt was quiet and expensive. Both were real. I changed the guest room into an office because I had worked from a corner of our bedroom for years while Mark's travel cases occupied the closet. I did not throw away every object he touched. I kept the cast iron skillet we bought on our 10th anniversary because I liked cooking with it. I donated the extra luggage because seeing identical black bags by the garage door made me count weekends. Recovery was less like erasing Mark and more like deciding which object still performed an honest function. At work, I began rechecking compensation files because the venue charge had followed a valid approval path while concealing its meaning. My supervisor arranged temporary peer review for high-value changes. 2 months without errors reminded me that verification could be support rather than a permanent way of living. Mark apologized differently as the divorce progressed. His first letter said he was sorry the bank mistake exposed people who never meant to hurt us. His second set said he was sorry he had not integrated the families honestly, language that still imagined one successful arrangement waiting behind better communication. Near the end, he wrote that there had never been 2 families available to integrate because neither had agreed to the other. He admitted the relationship with Robin might have ended years earlier if he had told the truth, and that Chloe's father-daughter role might never have existed in the same form. That was the first apology that did not treat disclosure as a missed management opportunity. I believed he understood more. I did not reverse my decision. 6 months after the wedding, Chloe sent Tess a photograph of the monogram on a small card from the ceremony. She said she and Jonah had kept the design because Tess made it and because their marriage did not become false when Mark's story did. She offered to remove it from the public wedding page if seeing it caused harm. Tess replied that the design belonged to them and did not need to disappear. She also said she was not ready for a relationship. Chloe answered, "I understand." There were no vows of sisterhood, shared holidays, or instant healing. 2 young women who had been assigned opposing roles made one honest exchange and left the future undecided. Tess completed graduate school 9 months before the divorce became final. The university gave each student 3 ceremony tickets. She invited me, her faculty advisor, and Paula. She told Mark he could watch the public live stream but did not give him a ticket. I asked once whether she was sure, then accepted the answer. When Tess crossed the stage, I did not search the aisle for Mark or wonder who else had a milestone that day. Afterward, she took photographs with me, Paula, her advisor, and alone. No image had to imply a complete family. Later she told me Mark watched the live stream and sent a short congratulations without asking why he was excluded. She considered that progress. I let the assessment belong to her. The hardest part of the year was accepting that some memories could be both loving and incomplete. Mark had taught Tess to ride a bicycle, stayed up building a model bridge for her 8th grade class, and driven through a snowstorm when she had appendicitis at college. He had also skipped 3 known milestones, lied about why, and used the resulting distance in a speech designed to honor himself. I did not need to turn the good memories into fraud to justify leaving. I did not need to turn the bad ones into the entire man to understand the damage. The marriage ended because informed consent had been missing from its structure, not because every breakfast and vacation required a new verdict. About a year after the bank alert, Tess accepted a transportation planning job in Cleveland. She rented a third-floor apartment in an old brick building with narrow stairs and no elevator. I drove up on moving day with coffee, a toolbox, and the cast-iron skillet she had asked to borrow. Mark offered to help. Tess told him she wanted the move to be small and asked him to visit another weekend after she settled. He accepted. I did not treat her choice as a victory over him. By noon, Tess and I had carried up 14 boxes, one desk chair, and a flat-pack drafting table whose instructions insisted 2 people could assemble it in 20 minutes. It took us nearly 2 hours. Halfway through, I installed a support rail backward. Tess laughed, handed me the diagram, and said, "You don't have to become dad at this." The sentence caught me harder than I expected. For months I had tried to arrive early, remember every tool, answer every call, and occupy every space Mark had left. I thought reliability meant filling the entire outline of a missing parent. Tess tightened one screw and said, "I asked my mom to come. That's who I need." I removed the rail and turned it around. We finished the table without discussing the wedding, the speech, or which father-daughter moments could be repaired. When the grocery delivery arrived, Tess called from the kitchen, "Mom, did you remember coffee?" "2 bags," I said. The word was ordinary and needed no modifier. I carried the groceries into the kitchen and put the skillet on her stove. The first alert had shown money leaving our home to support a title I did not know Mark held. 1 year later, I did not need a title that covered anyone else's place. I showed up as the person Tess had actually invited, and that was enough.